Austin, I remember liberals being almost horrified. They would just talk to dissidents like we're supposed to look at them as they're screaming, spitting monster, and these pictures are disturbing and so I want to ask you a little bit about Sandy Hook. I know the expectation is I'm supposed to come here and bash you over the head. I have no interest in you. I don't care what the expectations are. It would bore me if I tried.
Yeah, he's just being a cartoon. He's trying to sell tickets, and then he bought his own bullshit.
Well, he's right about enough things that it's very confusing. You know, Alex Jones was right about Epstein.
Spaghetti against the wall.
No.
One of those strips of spaghetti is right.
No. If Alex is here on the podcast,
is this cut out?
No, this isn't. If we have a good time and Alex was like talking about stuff, you would know that he knows some stuff that is bizarre if true, and then turns out to be true.
So a lot of you have probably been keeping up with the recent Alex Jones trial, which we're going to be talking about today. And probably nearly everyone watching this knows who Alex Jones is, and at least has some awareness of him. He's been absolutely massive in pop culture. So many parodies done of him on various different, mediums, gaming, TV, movies. He's even been in some movies himself back in the day. Now, I've made a couple videos about Alex Jones, one of them kind of focusing on Sandy Hook, but also his whole career, how he got his start, how, although he says Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist, is often a character, it's pretty clear if you go into his actual history, this is not a character he's been playing. But also disturbingly, even now, there are famous people who will go out of their way to sanitize the actions of Alex Jones and the real consequences of his conspiracy theories. Now, even if Alex Jones was a totally alright guy, like all the time, and the Sandy Hook thing was the only controversy he's had, that's enough, what he's done to the Sandy Hook parents is inexcusable, right? It's inexcusable. You'd be trying to sanitize this guy's image, even if he was virtually a saint outside of that. But he's not. He's a guy that dabbles in wildly racist and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and has effectively brainwashed so many people to think just like him and reject reality. And Alex Jones is part of his pipeline to more far-right beliefs because of the conspiracy theories he always pushes. And two of the most prominent people in recent times who've been trying to sanitize Alex Jones is Joe Rogan and Glen Greenwald. So today what we're going to do is firstly talk about the recent trial, but then also talk about the recent comments by these two individuals about Alex Jones, before just talking about the Sandy Hook thing in general and how defending Alex Jones at this point is totally insane and is reflective of you being a terrible person. So this video is going to be demonetized, so hopefully there's not too many interruptions for ad breaks and stuff like that. Of course, all my social medias in the description. Consider becoming a patron if you like my work to support me doing more videos which tackle often controversial subjects, which of course aren't viable for monetization. And yeah, let's just get into this video. So if you haven't been following this, people's Twitch streams reacting to the trial and how insane it's been, and you might also be aware of, Alex Jones being in lawsuits because there have been so many against him, and this Sandy Hook thing has been running on for years at this point. Perhaps you don't really know what this specific lawsuit is about. I just want to read you two quick little news articles to frame it before we start looking at some of the more viral clips going around about this defamation trial. So Associated Press, Alex Jones concedes Sandy Hook attack was 100% real. For years, bombastic far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones ranted to his millions of followers that the 2012 Sandy Hook elementary school shooting was a hoax, that children weren't killed, and that parents were crisis actors in an elaborate ruse to force gun control. Under oath and facing a jury that could hit him with $150 million in damages for his false claims, Jones said Wednesday he now realizes that it was irresponsible and believes that what happened in the deadliest school shooting in American history was 100% real. Jones's public contrition came on the final day of testimony in a 2-week defamation lawsuit against him and his Austin-based media company Free Speech Systems, brought by Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, the parents of 6-year-old Jesse Lewis. Their son was a first grader who was among the 20 students and 6 teachers killed at the school in Newtown, Connecticut on December 14th, 2012. I unintentionally took part in things that did hurt these people's feelings, said Jones, who also acknowledged raising conspiracy claims about other mass tragedies from the Oklahoma City bombing and Boston Marathon bombings to the mass shooting in Las Vegas and Parkland, Florida, and I am sorry for that. So clearly a guy who has no problem spreading conspiracy theories about awful tragedies, and a lot of that actually affect children. And this just breaking a couple minutes ago, Alex Jones to pay damages for Sandy Hook hoax claim. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones has been ordered to pay $4.1 million in damages after falsely claiming that Sandy Hook school shooting in 2012 was a hoax. Parents of the victims had been seeking at least $150 million in the defamation trial against the Infowars host. They said they had endured harassment and emotional distress because of Mr. Jones's misinformation. The jury decided damages on Thursday and must still decide any punitive damages. Mr. Jones had already lost a series of defamation cases brought by parents of the victims by default after failing to produce documents and testimony, but this is the first in which damages were determined by a jury. And the silver lining we're going to get into, ahead of a decision, lawyers for the two parents who brought the suit revealed that Mr. Jones's lawyers had inadvertently sent him 2 years of text messages from his client's phone. The messages could be of interest to the congressional panel investigating last year's Capitol riot. The committee says Mr. Jones helped organize a rally that took place just before. Mr. Jones also claims he was bankrupt despite evidence that his companies were earning about $800,000 a day. So, defaming parents of dead children killed in mass shootings. What a piece of shit this guy is. This has been going on for so many years. He, of course, lost by default back in like September or October last year because he actually wouldn't even show up to the trial. And then in this defamation case, thankfully, the jury did award these damages. In my opinion, not enough for the distress he has caused all these parents, but of course brought forward by these two parents in particular. So absolutely disgusting. Like I said, even if you thought this guy was all right apart from this, how can you defend him as anything other than a far-right conspiracy theorist who has damaged so many people's lives? I actually forgot to say this earlier, but if you know anyone who has had their brain melted by Alex Jones and who has essentially ruined their life, please let me know down in the comments. I would be very interested to read because, of course, he is not as big in the UK. I pretty much don't know anyone who watches him seriously, so let me know down in the comments. So yeah, absolutely disgusting, but there was a bit of justice done in the trial as well, in that Alex Jones's lawyers, probably lawyers of remarkable caliber, accidentally sent the lawyers on the other side 2 years worth of his text messages when he basically said, you know, he searched his phone, couldn't find any mention of Sandy Hook and pushing more Sandy Hook conspiracies in the last couple of years. This clip has gone viral, you may have seen it, but let's go through it together.
One of the things that you were ordered to do in this lawsuit, you were ordered to turn over any text messages mentioning Sandy Hook, right?
Yes.
And you didn't have any, right?
Not that we could find.
And you in fact told me in your testimony, sworn testimony before coming to this courtroom, you searched, right?
I did.
Okay. You know how an iPhone works, right? You've had iPhone text messaging for several years now.
Yeah.
What does it mean if the messages are in blue? Whose messages are those? Whose phone is this taken from?
I don't know whose phone's taken from. I mean, I turned the phone over and said, take the stuff off.
Can I have you look in the very bottom below the very bottom left corner? Is that your phone number?
Yes. So you did get my text messages. And it said you didn't. Nice trick.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Oh.
Indeed. You didn't give this text message to me. You don't know where this came from. Do you know where I got this?
No.
Mr. Jones, did you know that 12 days ago, your attorneys messed up and sent me an entire digital copy of your entire cell phone with every text message you've sent for the past 2 years, and when informed, did not take any steps to identify it as privileged or protect it in any way. And as of 2 days ago, it fell free and clear into my possession. And that is how I know you lied to me when you said you didn't have text messages about Sandy Hook. Did you know that?
I told you the truth. This is your Perry Mason moment. I gave them my phone, and then...
Mr. Jones, you need to answer the question.
No,
Did you know this happened?
No, I didn't know this happened. But I mean, I told you I gave them the phone over.
But just
And
answer the question.
you said in your deposition, you searched your phone. You said you pulled down the text, did the search function for Sandy Hook. That's what you said, Mr. Jones, correct?
And I had several different phones with this number, but I did, yeah. Well, of course, I mean, that's why you got it.
No, Mr. Jones, that's not what happened.
My lawyer sent it to you, but I'm hiding it. Okay.
Mr. Jones,
Mr. Jones, that?
please just answer questions. There's no question. Mr. Bankston also only asks questions.
Sure. Mr. Jones, in discovery, you were asked, do you have Sandy Hook text messages on your phone? And you said no, correct? You said that under oath, Mr. Jones, didn't you?
I mean, if I was mistaken, I was mistaken, but you got the messages right there.
You know what perjury is, right? I just want to make sure you know before we go any further. You know what it is.
So nice to see Alex Jones squirm there and see him realise how bad his lawyers are. Sending texts that he actually didn't send to anyone to the lawyers of people prosecuting him for defamation. It's just really, really nice to see someone powerful get this stuff, you know, done to them for once. But again, 4.1 million and then punitive damages. I still don't think that's enough for all the damage caused. But there is a silver lining to his lawyers being totally incompetent and not really doing what's best for Alex Jones. I saw this tweet today by Will Sommer. Lawyer for the Sandy Hook parents says in a hearing that he's received multiple law enforcement requests for Alex Jones's phone and plans to hand it over immediately today unless the judge prevents him from doing it. Alex Jones's lawyer complains he needs more time to review the cell phone that was accidentally handed over. Judge isn't having it, says he should hand it over much of the material a year ago anyway, then there would have been plenty of time to resolve it. Alex Jones's lawyers were just now trying to argue for a mistrial because they accidentally sent the Sandy Hook family lawyers the entire contents of Jones's phone. Judge denies the motion. So thankfully, the silver lining could be these lawyers being so incompetent that they send all this evidence that contradicts Alex Jones's own testimony under oath. It might actually be used by the Justice Department, and who knows what they will find in Alex Jones's text, especially about January 6th. This guy is very well connected in far-right circles. Who knows what people would have been saying to him. Now, we are going to come back to Sandy Hook a bit more and how disgusting his lies are. But two people who've been playing more defense for Alex Jones lately, for some reason just like lately decided they wanted to come out in support of Alex Jones, is Glen Greenwald and Joe Rogan for completely different reasons. Now, because we're staying on the topic of Sandy Hook, I want to focus on what Glen Greenwald was saying about Sandy Hook in this interview for a documentary about Alex Jones himself, where Glen Greenwald hosted a Q&A with him. Now, Glen Greenwald, if you guys don't know, is famous pretty much primarily for stuff to do with Edward Snowden, so he got a pretty good reputation from that, but slowly just becoming a far-right grifter at this point. He has always been a libertarian, not a leftist, but he has often supported left-wing causes, and of course was a big supporter of Lula against Bolsonaro, saying, you know, all the stuff that sent him to prison was fake, although seemingly has gone back on this as well. He just seems to be working for the highest bidder at this point. But let's go into what he said to Alex Jones at this Q&A. So first of all, he starts off by basically giving Jones a bunch of compliments, bizarrely, about his look, and kind of framing him as a guy who's historically gone out of his way to kind of expose the powerful and the establishment. That's not what I'd say about Alex Jones, but take a look.
I remember when the internet first discovered some of the early pictures of you from your public access days in Austin. I remember liberals being almost horrified that was talking to dissidents like we're supposed to look at them as they're screaming, spitting monster, and these pictures are discriminating against them. And you obviously from the beginning had a kind of charisma, a natural charisma from the camera. That's what people even said the first time they saw you.
So that is, of course, not accurate at all, and why someone would ever characterize Alex Jones like this in a very positive way, might I add. It's bizarre about Alex Jones, even if we don't take into account all the conspiracies about mass shootings in school and defaming parents of dead children, or going after children who survived mass shootings like David Hogg. But this is the most disgusting part. Keep in mind, this is a week before Alex Jones has just been made to pay $4.1 million for defaming these parents, after he'd already defaulted on another trial about Sandy Hook because he didn't actually show up. He's clearly also been lying about spreading these conspiracy theories recently. So let's see what Glen Greenwald has to say about Sandy Hook, despite the fact it being very, very relevant to Alex Jones right at the moment.
You You said that you have made mistakes. Obviously, one of those is the stuff I said last night. We watched you the film, congregating about the fact that you made statements that turned out to be untrue. You've obviously spent a lot of kind of reflective time. It's like the soulful knowledge. So, what is it that you think caused you to do that? I mean, you referenced something that I identify with it myself. That when people who lie for a living are telling you that you're a liar, when people who are whose job it is to spread this information or accuse you of doing it, you kind of want to dig in a little bit and not give an inch to people who are criticizing you in good faith. What is it about kind of how social media works, about how kind of groups function? Have you thought about some of the psychological and cultural dynamics that led you to make some of those mistakes in Sally Hook? I think it's interesting. I've identified this with myself. I think you start out as kind of this outsider. You start off as like an access TV. You start growing a little bit in influence, and suddenly you become, I think, one of the most influential people in the country with one of the largest audiences. It's hard, I think, sometimes to remind yourself, I'm not that guy on access TV and Austin anymore, because it wasn't all that long ago when you weren't getting so much scrutiny, and suddenly you're subjected to more scrutiny than anybody. And I think it's hard to try and kind of adapt with that, because it's kind of a slow and incremental. That's exactly what I was saying. When you are somebody who's standing against kind of establishment authority and establishment institutions, you know that one of the things they're going to do is seize on any mistake that you make. So, and this is what I kind of try and counsel people all the time who are trying to be dissidents, which is you need to be 1,000 times more careful, because they can lie all the time and no one's going to call them out on it because they're on the side of the people with the more powerful megaphones. Do you feel like you, on some occasions, have paid insufficient attention to the need not to hand your enemies really easy and cheap weapons for them to take and bash you over the head with?
100%. I'm not 48 now, actually, there's a learning process. But I didn't realize how big this deal was. This has been big for 20 years. Really big for 10. And so, I would just kind of like, I would say, no, this is not, I'm not saying this is the thing, where they would take it out of context. And so, you have to take a microphone. Just because they're the ones editing it, doesn't mean you feel that responsibility.
So, absolutely revolting characterization of Alex Jones spreading these conspiracies about Sandy Hook. Basically acts like Alex Jones was someone who got it wrong, and he admitted he got it wrong in a very soulful way, but he dug in because of criticism and continued to spread this misinformation, which led to these people getting insanely harassed by his fans. They act like he was trying to do something good with Sandy Hook. He was trying to be a crusader for truth and against the establishment, and that's when he made his mistake. Not acting like this guy intentionally did this because he's insane, he's a grifter, and he's also just a massive conspiracy theorist. This characterization of him as some sort of anti-establishment journalist is absolutely ridiculous. And Glen Greenwald basically saying, I meant to come here and ask you about Sandy Hook. I'm basically not going to do this. And actually, let me spin this around where I make it seem like your crusade against the Sandy Hook parents is actually kind of reflective of your decent qualities. And I relate with you because when people call me out for stuff I've done wrong, I dig in and double down. Aren't we all just human? We make mistakes about defaming the parents of dead children and getting them harassed so bad they have to move home 11 times, and some of them have to wear prosthetic makeup when they give interviews because they're so worried about someone targeting them. Again, absolutely ridiculous and disgusting characterization. Now, you guys might know a lot about the Sandy Hook parents, and you guys might, have been following this a lot. Some of you may not know how bad it got for a lot of these people. And Glen Greenwald is someone who certainly does know this. Like, I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he doesn't really understand what Alex Jones has done here. He just doesn't care as this contrarian right-wing grifter. So I actually talked about this in another video, but I feel like this article is worth reading again, just because I really feel like it delves into the harassment some people got. Now, Leonard Posner is probably one of the most notable cases of this, and it's really brutal stuff, which Alex Jones is basically forced this guy to endure by making up conspiracies about him, his dead child, and all the rest of the dead children, all the rest of the parents, and how disgusting this guy is. Now, think about what Glen Greenwald has just said while I'm reading this, and when we get to the next part of the video with like Anti-SJWs platforming Alex Jones and Joe Rogan defending Alex Jones, also keep this in mind. So, an article by The Guardian on 2017 where Hadley Freeman interviewed him, and his son Noah Posner was killed in the shooting. So just days after, when the US was still reeling from the tragedy, and Posner himself was, he says, pretty much in a catatonic state, the theory started spreading. Sandy Hook had never happened. It was staged by actors. The children hadn't existed. It was a ruse by Obama. The hoaxers poured over photos of the family and children on social media and pointed to any visual similarities they could find between the children and living ones. Families were harassed by hoaxers online and off, insisting that they stop their fake grieving. When Posner roused himself from his catatonic grief to post photos of Noah online, hoaxers would leave comments like "fake kid." So remember, this is back in 2017. The week before our interview, a judge issued a warrant for the arrest of Lucy Richard. She is alleged to have sent messages to Posner, including one that read, "Death is coming to you real soon and there's nothing you can do about it." That was bad, Posner agrees, but not necessarily the most unsettling. After all, others have put photo of his house on the web and reported him to Child Protection Services. "This is the world I deal with now," says Posner. Posner himself used to be into conspiracy theories when he lived in Connecticut. He often had to commit to New York, and how's this for a weird turn of events? And he would listen to right-wing radio hosts such as Alex Jones and Michael Savage on long drives. "I'm self-employed, an entrepreneur. I was always looking for more information so I could get the edge on the next guy to get a better idea of the geopolitical perspective." Posner says, once he got used to Jones' raspy voice, he liked him especially. Alex Jones appears to think out of the box. He's entertaining. Arguably, more than anyone, Jones is responsible for spreading the conspiracy theories. His radio show and website Infowars.com have an audience of more than 8 million, and they specialize in these kind of conspiracies. On the 27th of January 2013, Jones told his audience, "In the last month and a half, I have come out and said it was clearly staged. Unfortunately, evidence began to come out that points more and more in that direction. I wasn't very verbal at that point, but I managed to send Alex Jones an email," says Posner. He wrote, "Haven't we had our share of pain and suffering? I used to enjoy listening to your shows. Now I feel that your type of show created these hateful people and they need to be reeled in." So this guy actually directly messaged Alex Jones to get him to stop. Alex Jones' assistant replied, "Alex has no doubt this was real, but Jones's thinking seemed to change. In 2015, he told his audience it was fake. With actors, in my view, manufactured, and I couldn't believe it at first. I knew they had actors there, clearly, but I thought they had some real kids, and it just shows how bold they are. They clearly use actors." So a more recent interview in 2019 with NPR, and Lenny speaks a bit more on this stuff. They're talking about 2014 again. He says, "During the time I was in contact with some of the deniers, I'd publish information about Noah, about his life, and about his death. So I published his death certificate, and after doing so, I was accused of publishing a fake one, and that had turned into a larger work titled Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, which was published over 400 pages. So in the book, I was accused of faking this certificate and also lying about other things. So in a lawsuit, I had to show a lot of information about Noah's life, prove that he lived. I took a DNA test, I took a sample of Noah, and a DNA test was taken by Noah's mother as well to prove that in court that I am Noah's father and Noah lived and Noah died. So all that information had to be actually presented in court." So before I just talk about that a bit more, just one more little thing I want to add on to it. Alex Jones and Jeremy Richmond, Sandy Hook dad kills himself as defamation suit continues. So one of their parents took their own life after their daughter Aviel was killed in the massacre. What did Alex Jones have to say about this? "We have no idea whether he was even murdered at this point. Why would some anti-gun guy do this? This is really sad. My prayers go out to him and his family, and we wish for the truth of whatever really happened here to come out. We don't know yet, and we'll see the corporate media say outrageous lies, but it's what they do. And look, the good news of no collusion, the good news that I'm not a Russian agent comes out, and now this happens right on time." So he thinks that parent was killed to make him look bad. So can you imagine, first of all, losing your elementary school child in a horrible mass shooting, and how you'd have to deal with that, and how it would ruin your life, everything like that. Then imagining going to court to prove that your child actually existed in the first place and they were your actual child. This is the stuff that Alex Jones caused that parent. Imagine you going to court to try and prove that, right? Your child has been killed in a mass shooting, and now you're facing the hassle and the mental toll of going to court to prove you were even their father in the first place. And of course, the even more tragic element of that whole story with Leonard Posner was he was an Alex Jones fan as well for a time. And he actually asked Alex Jones personally, can you stop this? And that just shows Alex Jones does not care about who he hurts. There were 2 parents in the defamation trial recently. These are 2 more parents. One of them, sadly, obviously, has passed away now. Although I couldn't find any information about this, I'm sure Alex Jones's conspiracy theories didn't help too much dealing with the mental toll losing a child in such tragic circumstances takes. So this guy is a massive, massive piece of shit. And like I said, even if he'd never done anything wrong before this, just the sole fact he spread this conspiracy theory and the damage it caused is enough for him to be ostracized, obviously facing some legal repercussions. Hopefully there's even the silver lining that he'll face investigation over January 6th as well. But for people like Glen Greenwald to come out and basically sanitize Alex Jones and basically act like it was an innocent mistake. Like, when people criticize you for it, you dig in, and you've admitted in a very human moment in the documentary that, you know, you regret it and it was wrong. Like, Greenwald should have been his actual lawyer because he seems to be more sympathetic to what Alex Jones did compared to his real lawyers who handed over the text he did. But yeah, like I said, on top of this, Alex Jones has also spread loads of far-right, anti-Semitic and racist conspiracy theories, and has pretty much brainwashed so many people, is a terrible father as well, I covered that in the other video, and has historically just been a terrible person even when he was in his 20s and getting his start on like local Texas radio. So there is nothing redeeming about this guy. And for Glen Greenwald to cosplay as a serious journalist while talking to Alex Jones like this shows how far this guy has fallen. And in the comments, let me know if you want me to do a whole separate video about Glen Greenwald and how he's just become a massive right-wing grifter. Now, again, with all of this in mind, let's go to Joe Rogan, who has recently also defended Alex Jones. And remember there was that podcast with Tim Pool, and it seems like the most cursed podcast ever. Michael Malice, Tim Pool, Blair White, Alex Jones, and Joe Rogan all in some horrible trailer together where him and Joe Rogan seem like they get on really well. And Joe Rogan was saying basically Alex Jones was right about everything.
Oh, it's Joe Rogan!
There you go. So, Joe Rogan in the house.
Alex Jones, ladies and gentlemen, right about basically everything. Finally, it's all coming down. The truth is coming out.
So while we've got Joe here, let me just ask this one question of Joe.
The amount of people that actually pay attention to all this
I'm blinded
is
by the fact that I'm
fairly small.
informed. That's a good point.
Yeah, you're very informed.
So what's gonna-
you're always on it.
Credit him right there. But let me ask Joe before he's got to go here. He's got to go to a comedy show night. Let me ask Joe his view, shifting gears on the political correct wars.
But hold on. Keep talking about this because
Okay,
this
well,
is an
it's fine.
important thing to like expand on what we're talking about here. And what I'm saying is, why did he have to do that?
Wait,
we had to do that because everything was falling
Right.
apart.
No, but
right?
So
I have
Joe,
one-
elaborate. Joe,
Can I
elaborate.
just say one sentence?
Yes, sir.
Go
Joe,
ahead.
I got a question for you. I know I'm not trying to change subjects because the Rittenhouse thing's huge and anarchy's all. What about Joe Biden? Because you early on said he's senile a year before he got in.
Everybody said it. It wasn't anything.
Well, let me.
But on a more recent podcast, about 3 months ago with Doug Stanhope, he started criticizing Alex Jones, and Joe Rogan got very defensive and essentially was talking about how much Alex Jones actually gets right. And he gets a couple things wrong here and there, but he's not inherently a bad guy. And again, rehabilitating his reputation as someone who has been like this anti-establishment journalist who has exposed loads of things like Epstein and got so much right, but we should feel kind of bad for him and feel like he needs a friend there to steer him away from the stuff like Sandy Hook. So take a look at this clip.
Over the top.
Do you want to do it
We
while you're out
all
here?
know-
Do you want to do it while you're out here?
No.
I'll set it up.
He's gone.
No.
When he started, when
He's
Alex
fine.
Jones started in Austin, we were more popular than him, and he did this cable access thing.
Yeah.
And then that guy Charlie is like, yeah, he's just being a cartoon. He's trying to sell tickets, and then he bought his own bullshit.
Well, he's right about enough things that it's very confusing. You know, Alex Jones was right about Epstein.
Spaghetti against the wall.
No.
One
no.
of those strips
No,
of
he-
spaghetti
no,
is right.
No. But he told me about Bohemian Grove. He told me about Epstein's Island. When he told me about Epstein's Island, I was like, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. It's an island. That's crazy. And it turned out to be true. I was like, what? And and he tells me people who told him about it. If you hang out with Alex, you would understand. Like, Alex has problems. He's definitely had problems. He had a lot of alcoholism. But the problem with Alex is all day long he's investigating conspiracies and finding out how many of them are accurate, and it freaks him out. And and he needs someone around him to balance things out, and he doesn't have that. And when he does have that, when Alex talks to people like you or me, if Alex is here on a podcast,
is this cut out?
No, this isn't. If we have a good time and Alex was like talking about stuff, you would know that he knows some stuff that is bizarre if true, and then turns out to be true. And then you go, what are you doing? Like, how you? And you're like, all day I study these things. All day I investigate these things. And he does. He has a lot of like really weird, influential people who contact him about weird information about shit that turns out to be fucking accurate, man.
So in that clip, you wouldn't think they're talking about a conspiracy theorist that has defamed the parents of dead children killed in a mass shooting, and Joe Rogan acting like that Alex Jones is someone who's at the forefront of investigative journalism, exposing the Epstein Island. Now, if you watch any, documentaries about Epstein or any of the podcasts about Epstein, it's pretty clear loads of people knew about Epstein for years. Wasn't he first indicted for having sex with underage girls in like 2008, 2009? His island was known about, work with Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey was known about. Like how Kevin Spacey and others, it's just like an open secret. It seemed like that was the case with Jeffrey Epstein as well. It's only after, his more recent trial and when he actually died in prison, people started becoming more obsessed with him and taking more notice of him. Alex Jones was not the first person to break the story. There have been lawyers involved in prosecuting him since like 2007. So Joe Rogan even giving him credibility for that is absolutely ridiculous. But also acting like Alex Jones has any excuse for saying this stuff about Sandy Hook and saying that, he's right enough that you've got to give him some credit and maybe downplay his bad tendencies of just making shit up about parents dealing with immense grief and essentially getting his rabid followers who give him $800,000 a day to harass these parents so they've got to move a bunch of times. This guy is an absolute monster and also proves cancel culture does not exist for so many people. Like, he doesn't even have a platform on mainstream social media and he's still raking in nearly $1 million a day and having this absolutely massive audience who he indoctrinates with these absolutely unhinged, like I said, racist, anti-Semitic, or just generally insane conspiracy theories, which they then take. And it's not helped that Glen Greenwald and Joe Rogan, more mainstream figures in the media, both carry water for him, platform him, and normalize his views and act like things like Sandy Hook are just stuff he got wrong, but he gets most things right. But it's just when you're in this conspiracy mindset, sometimes you get a few things wrong. Like, I don't know, saying that one of the worst school shootings in American history was actually a false flag operation done by the government to steal your guns, and none of those children or even the school existed in the first place. I mean, that's not really in line with like MK Ultra and Jeffrey Epstein and stuff. That is just completely insane and completely made up. But again, also even in nerd media, anti-SJW YouTubers were so excited to get Alex Jones on their channel. The Jeremy twins from Geeks and Gamers and The Quartering, they treated him like he was an actual serious person, and The Quartering had to walk a lot of it back afterwards because he did get criticised for going on this live stream with Alex Jones. But listen to what they asked Alex Jones. You tell me, do they think this guy is ridiculous, or do these people think Alex Jones is unhinged?
The one thing a lot of us, kind of what we talk about here on this show and what our world is the wokeness of Hollywood and everything. And the question I get asked and all of us get asked, and I'm interested in your perspective on this, where did it really start? Now, obviously, that's a deep question for someone like you, but where did it really start to show the cracks in the wokeness of Hollywood, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a complex cultural question. And so it's really hard to give an accurate question. But I would say Hollywood was already collapsing by the time Obama got there. And that he was sold as like a Hollywood commodity to bring humanity together, save everybody. And Americans wanted to really, stop racism. And then when he became a divider and a manipulator and people saw Hollywood pushing him, it began to really crumble.
By Hollywood, to bounce off what Alex is saying, Hollywood felt like they could control culture before with these movies. And, like Friends, the TV show, everyone had the same freaking haircut as Ross. And everyone had the same haircut as Jennifer Aniston. People stopped looking up to them. So then they became political activists.
Speaking like them.
German.
Right. Yeah, they use the same words.
Yeah, they're basically pissed that we left them. They were obsessed with controlling culture, and now they've just, like Count Dracula, opened up his cape and just are sending out all the poison gas.
So based on them asking about like entertainment in Hollywood and the left, it seems to me these guys take him fairly seriously, and they actually like his worldview because it is inherently far right and anti-leftist. So that's just a way he's been kind of normalized on general social media. But it's pretty bizarre to me, after he's been deplatformed and you feel like ostracized in some ways, people like Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Anti-SJW YouTubers, and now Glen Greenwald have all been helping to rehabilitate his image, despite the fact he has just been in a defamation trial for defaming these parents of dead children and is being forced to pay millions of dollars because he's defamed them, and he lied under oath about even spreading these conspiracy theories in the last couple years, thanks to Alex Jones's incompetent lawyers who sent the others the text messages. So I think there's an element like with Jordan Peterson of morbid curiosity that they have to cover this person, or they even want to talk to him in the first place, so they ignore all the gross shit they've said. But with Alex Jones specifically, he just takes it to another level where what he's done is so bad and is so infamous, you cannot pretend you don't know about it. You cannot pretend you have not heard these insane conspiracy theories or these racist conspiracy theories. You have done. You're choosing to treat him like he's rational. You're choosing to treat him like he's not a grifter. And you're choosing to rehabilitate his image to make it seem like that he's actually always been onto something. And he's a relatively smart guy. He just gets things wrong sometimes. And I think it says so much about Glen Greenwald and Joe Rogan that they aren't disgusted by him. Like, even from what I've just read you today, which isn't even like going into much detail, is absolutely disgusting. And there's so much more out there to read. And these people have no problem with that, right? And I guess it's all like a money thing as well. Alex Jones is rich. Joe Rogan is rich. Glen Greenwald seems like he's rich now as well. So they have this interest of collaborating and, you know, cross-pollinating their audience. And in some ways, they do go hand in hand, as weird as that sounds. Like, Glen Greenwald is anti-establishment, pro-right-wing. So is Alex Jones. So is Joe Rogan. So there is probably a crossover now with their right-wing audiences. So it makes sense to team up. But overall, yep, Alex Jones, absolutely disgusting. Glad to see him squirm in court. Glad to see he will have to pay something, although I don't believe that is anywhere near enough. But hopefully the history of his text messages will be his actual undoing, and then his lawyers will become like national heroes or something. But anyway, that is it for the video and how these people are helping to rehabilitate Alex Jones. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Follow me on social media, and if you're kind of wondering why does your background look so different, I'm actually staying at my girlfriend's for the next 2 weeks. So the next, I guess, 5 videos will be filmed here. Before we go back to my old set, we're going to put the chocolate orange up, have 2 more weeks, and then I'm off to Vietnam. Don't worry, I'm still working in Vietnam, but of course, it's going to look very, very different. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you all for watching.